Red Sox fans have longed to hear it. The Boston Red Sox are world champions.
Can you believe it?
It hasn't happened at Fenway Park for 95 years.
Fires. Swing and a miss. Strike three. It's over. The Red Sox have won the world championship.
Tune in to the newest show presented by Clovercrest Media. It's Obie's Backstop Podcast. Catch it twice a week, every Red Sox series finale on your favorite podcast platform.
I love wiffle ball. No other way to explain it. The home runs, the base hits, the big home runs.
Number 17.
For sure. Show 17, and let me tell you guys.
Hey, man, we'll eventually become the Simpsons, man. I mean, you know, watch.
That'd be great, right? Hey, guys, we have a packed show for you guys today. We have Larry Forletta that's going to come in and join us here in a minute. We have a lot. We're pretty packed. How's your week so far, Carlos?
That pretty much says it all.
All right. Well, hey, you know what? Let's go ahead. Let's get this show started. Let's bring Larry on board. You know.
All right.
Go ahead, Carlos.
Larry, good to have you, sir. How are you today?
Thank you, and thank you both for having me on your show.
Awesome. Let's first tell the audience what we're trying to do here and why we have Larry on. So, just before Israel and the Palestinians decided to smack each other around again, and before this gas crisis showed up, basically every story on every website, no matter what, was about a cop doing something wrong. That was like the hot story of the week. And so Frank and I had a few conversations about it on the show, about certain cases, what we thought. And we had figured, we need to bring someone in who's actually on that side of the of the discussion, someone who's got experience with the badge, just so I think people can maybe get a better understanding of what it is that police people, policemen and law enforcement, what they go through, the kind of training they have, the type of situations they can get into, the mistakes that they're capable of because they're human. And so Frank went on the hunt. And lo and behold, he told me he found you, which is great because I think this is a good conversation to have. It's a good idea to just inform people of what it is, and then once everyone's done listening, they can make their own judgments based on what they hear tonight, hopefully. So, I think the way we should start this off is just give us a brief background about yourself, Larry. Tell us about your experiences, where you've been, where you've worked, stuff like that.
Well, thank you. And before I actually begin, this is National Police Week. May 15th, tomorrow, is the actual memorial for law enforcement that was created by President Kennedy back on May 15th, 1962, to honor the law enforcement heroes who've given their lives for this country.
Wow.
So with that being said, and I've attended those ceremonies, and they're really something to see. But my background goes for almost 30 years of law enforcement experience. I started out with the Maryland State Police. I was there for almost 8 years. I worked undercover narcotics. From there, I went to DEA, the Drug Enforcement Administration, and I worked in Washington, D.C., Baltimore, in Pittsburgh, where I finally retired, and I started my own investigation business. And now we're also doing our podcast, which is called Forletta Investigates. So with my realm of training and responsibilities, especially working with DEA, I spent a lot of time in South Florida, and I got to know it very well.
You get a lot of training in South Florida.
And believe me, I'd love to come to South Florida in the winter. So it was a great experience, working, especially, like I said, we did a lot of investigations in the Miami area, and Naples and other places there. Mm-hmm. So, and I know you guys are from the South Florida area. You know what I'm talking about.
No, there's plenty of job opportunities.
No doubt. There is no doubt plenty of job opportunities.
Absolutely.
But once you go through a lot of training, which I did with the Maryland State Police and of course with DEA, you learn how to develop and handle people. Now, the one thing that's, in law enforcement, just like anything else, it's all about common sense, and not only just common sense, but how you treat people. I learned a long time ago, I treat people the way I want to be treated. And right. I didn't learn that from being a cop. I learned it from being at home with my family, the Catholic school that I went to, things of that nature of my background, which, led me to law enforcement. But at the end of the day, I feel that most law enforcement officers, and you may agree or disagree with that, are honest and hardworking and decent. There are bad cops. There's no question about it. And I put some of them in federal prison. And I can tell you one of the cases that kind of outstands in my mind were way back when in the 80s on the Miami River cops. That was
They were the ones who were dumping the drugs in the river. Yeah.
Well, they were killing the drug traffickers. Okay. So those were what I call bad guys with a badge.
Right.
And they happen to get in through the system sometimes. So I recall that, it's almost in the back of my mind. And like I said, I've arrested police officers. I've arrested a Collier County Sheriff's deputy back in the day for leaking information to the traffickers, and put police officers in jail in Washington, D.C. and Baltimore, Maryland, you name it. But I can tell you that the majority of us want those bad guys with a uniform in prison where they belong.
Of course. It's like the bad apple, analogy. You got one, it kind of like ruins the rest of you. And even if it doesn't like ruin you as far as your character and your integrity, it makes you look bad. It starts to make everyone look bad. And that's a shame. But right. I have mentioned on the show a few times, unfortunately, like everything else, when it's run by human beings, you're going to have flaws. There's always going to be. There's always going to be that flaw. So, all right. So then let's really break it down for the audience, and I want them to get as thorough of a breakdown of police life as they can. So tell us about training. Now, naturally, with all those stories that were going on, the natural argument or debate was, well, they need more training and they don't do enough of this. And the truth is, like most people who watch their team on Sunday who get mad because the quarterback didn't throw it to the right receiver, I call them armchair cops. They have no idea. Yeah. So break it down for the audience. Tell us about training. Tell us about how intense it is, especially in the aspects of, like resisting arrest and firearm training. How much, how intense, how does that work? Let us have it.
Well, first of all, I am a proponent of training. You can never get enough of it. And I think that's always an issue that comes out. One thing about law enforcement, they adjust to the situation. They adjust to the criticism that it's every day. It's almost to the point where you begin to accept it and you deal with it, because we look at that as part of the job. But the training that I've received is top notch. I can tell you that. And I'll start off with the Maryland State Police. we lived in a police academy barracks, military style, for about 6 months. And in those 6 months, you do everything from self-defense, learning the law. It goes on, and firearms training. You just don't put your finger on the trigger and pull the trigger. One thing about shooting, I've heard some comments made by people like, oh, you should have shot him in the arm. You should have shot the guy in the leg, blah, blah, blah. But here's the reality. We train to shoot upper mass. Upper mass is really to disable the person. Because I can tell you, if you are in those kind of situations, you're no matter how much training you have, that adrenaline is still pumping through. And I've been in a shooting. I've also almost got shot and killed in a raid, so I know what that's like. And so those are the types of scenarios that you go through. And I can tell you, even being with DEA, as many of drug raids that we did, breaking somebody's door down at 6 o'clock in the morning is not a good feeling. I can tell you that right now, because we don't know what is on the other end of that door. Sometimes we'll have information, that people have weapons, but I can tell you, most drug traffickers have weapons. So we never go in with the thinking of there's no weapons in there. But again, sometimes police shootings, they could be the result of somebody overreacting. It could be a result of somebody's own personal issues that they may have. One of the things that they always looked at police shootings, for example, is the background of that person. A lot of times is, have you ever been punched in the face before? In my neighborhood, we fought a lot, and I've been punched in the face, and I've had black eyes and bloody noses. So I know what that's like. Now, your training kicks in so that you don't overreact to a situation. However, in some cases, it happens. You see what happened out in Minnesota recently with a female officer that was supposedly pulling her taser and shot the guy with her weapon. Again, even I have to look at that and be critical, because I'm looking at her training and I'm looking, is there a possibility that she overreacted? Now, it maybe was an accident. I don't think it was done intentional. But again, when those things happen, you have to take the responsibility for what happened. And that's the unfortunate part when you get into those types of shootings. Same thing, when we talk about subduing somebody, once we have somebody subdued, under control, handcuffed, there's no more putting your knee on somebody's neck. There's no more of that. You don't stand around and put that kind of pressure on anybody. Once they're in custody, you stop. And you also have an obligation. If one of the people that you're with are getting a little more assertive, you got to calm them down, because that's what we do with each other. You got to calm them down. So yeah, your training goes a long way. Self-defense tactics. I'm a defense tactics instructor. I learned that through DEA and so on. And you learn a lot of techniques. I can tell you, I was in riots in Baltimore back in the late 70s. So, you have to take action against people breaking the law. I've been in KKK rallies. I've been in Colt miner strikes. So, and the beat goes on. And so the training is very important. And training should be done on a regular basis. Now, here's the real issue: funding. The major police departments, let's say like Metro-Dade or Miami PD, have that type of funding where they can train on a regular basis, okay? But if you go to some of the smaller police departments, or even some of the smaller sheriff's departments, let's say in Florida, they may not have access to that kind of training. So some of those issues should try to be resolved by, the state and local governments and the federal government in terms of training for law enforcement.
So, wow, that's a lot to dig in. Go ahead, Frank.
Actually, so now you might know this, you might not, but the majority of the police departments, do they do recurrent training like on a yearly basis, or maybe every
Right.
other year or something like that?
Well, it depends on, again, that organization. I'll talk specifically about DEA. Okay, we train every quarter, we shoot every quarter. Okay, we qualify every quarter because that's the type of training. Now, even in between that quarterly training, we train some more. Okay, especially when you're doing drug raids. So you have to. This is something that it's a natural. You want it to be natural when you do those what we call dynamic entries. So you want to be prepared for that, okay? Some of the police departments, now if you have, for example, like Miami, they have a SWAT team. So those teams, they train on a regular basis. I don't know how the patrol units do it. Sometimes they may or may not. I'm not sure about that. But I can tell you with specific types of divisions within a police agency, they all have some type of training. And so we trained, again, when I say we, I talk about DEA, we trained quite regularly on a regular basis.
All right. So let me, now, some of the stories that have come out involve veterans, others involve rookies or younger LEOs. Let me ask, first of all, I guess 2 questions. How long is academy training? And second, I guess there has to be what I assume is like that transition period where, you've been through the academy and once you take your first shift on the street, it's completely different. Like sure. Everything so how long on average do you feel it would take an officer to like really adjust to like, all right, I know what I learned in school, but this is a different animal out here, and really like just absorb that mindset and be very efficient at what they do?
Well, so typically what happens is once you graduate from a police academy, and I'll go back to the Maryland State Police for me specifically, we train, like I said, for 6 months. And once you're graduated from the academy, you're put with a seasoned officer. That's your training officer. And in DEA, we call it a field training agent. And in the state police, we call it a field training officer. Okay. Still, it's the same principle because they're putting you with an experienced officer who's actually worked the streets, who's been there for years. And usually that person has, good evaluations, never had any issues, things of that nature. And I'll go back to Minnesota because this is where, a lot of people don't understand. That particular person who just got convicted, I don't even want to say the guy's name. When he got convicted, okay, he did what good officers don't do. Okay, he went beyond subduing somebody. He killed him, basically. And the officers that were there present stood around and watched. Okay, now, as I understand it, they're rookies. Okay, yeah. But at the end of the day, common sense should take place. If you see somebody that's in that type of position, you got to do something. You can't let that go on. Okay, because now you become complicit in that crime. Okay, so and the other issue is that those officers that worked with the other guy who committed that heinous crime, he had been disciplined about 18 different times.
Yeah.
Why in the world would the command staff put young guys in with this person who was irresponsible? So you have to not just blame, those guys that were standing around. You have to blame the administration for letting this go on. Because at the end of the day, the police chief and his staff are responsible for what happens on the street. That's clear cut.
So, yeah, I do remember the details you described. Now, I do want to ask a question. This is kind of one of those questions that, like, you're not supposed to ask, but you should. A lot of times in the public sector, actually in most jobs, but I see it happen in the public sector, and I don't think police, the law enforcement might be any different. do you think in the case of Chauvin, that the young cops that were there, do you think there may have been an unfortunate, how do I word it, like a phenomenon where basically as a rookie, you kind of don't say anything to the supervisor because you don't want to get on their bad side kind of thing? You know what I mean?
Right.
Do you think does that happen? Number one, does that happen a lot in law enforcement? And do you think it could have happened in this case as well?
Well, it does happen in law enforcement. Again, when you see something that's that extreme, whether you've been on a job for an hour or 20 years, you can't just sit by and do nothing. I don't buy that. I don't buy that type of responsibility, because then they're really evading their own responsibility as officers. You know, they're there to protect and serve the community, as all of us do. But again, when you have somebody that goes rogue like he did, now I can understand from maybe their perspective, you know, what the hell do we do? You know, do we say something to this guy? You know, I've been on a job for 2 weeks. You know, what am I supposed to do? You know,
what if they blacklist me, or what if he gives me a bad name, or what if I get crummy shifts? Or, I'm sure that stuff runs through the minds of a lot of like younger officers.
It does.
When their supervisors might be acting out of line, and that's a bad phenomenon. So like, I don't know how that's addressed. And again, it's not just law enforcement. Many jobs, especially public sector jobs out there, do that.
Yeah. Well, it happens in the corporate world every day.
Yeah.
Yeah. Listen, I question my boss all the time. To be honest with you, my main job is logistics. I move cargo all over the world. And one of the things, when it comes down to TSA, customs, laws, we have to abide by them. And I had a job where the guy was like, no, we're not going to do it like this. You're going to do it like this. And I'm like, look, I'm not doing it that way.
Right.
I go, you're wrong, and that's it.
Yep. I mean, at the end of the day, you know what's right and wrong, and you have to take a stand there, telling him, hey, I'm not doing that. And if any supervisor had instructed me to do something that was illegal, I tell them to beat it and get lost. It's not happening, and I may even report them for trying to get me to commit a crime. One of the questions they ask you, and even in interviews, what happens? Let's say, for example, you're on a drug raid, okay, and you're in a room, and you see another agent taking money and putting it in his pocket. What would you do? And some people give different responses.
That's a great like situation, because a lot of them would not say anything.
Exactly. Some probably wouldn't, but I can tell you this. I can tell you the guy that's on your show would in a minute. If I saw somebody stealing money, they're getting arrested, or I'm grabbing them and snatching them up and I'm taking them right to my supervisor if I saw that happen. Right. There's no room for that. I just you can't tolerate it. But again, somebody might say, well, I don't know what to do. Maybe I'll go talk to another agent or another friend to see what happens. And, it all comes down to you at the end of the day. But I could tell you most guys and gals that I worked with would probably do the same thing that I said that I would do. But it is a precarious position to be put in, when you see somebody doing something really stupid.
All right. Now I want to now get into the more intense aspects of your career. Again, a lot of the stories that come across our screens, unfortunately, as Americans, we're too busy making complete judgment calls on 5 seconds of video. I'm sure with many of your drug raids, you've been in enough incidents where you've probably used your piece a lot more than most LEOs. But can you take us through maybe like one scenario where you had to be quick? Like, for example, things looked fine and you didn't appear to have the need to use it, and then all of a sudden.
Well, I'll give you a quick scenario that I was involved with. Okay, and it was a drug raid early morning. So we did what we call a dynamic entry, and usually we have a shield to go in. You know, the first person through the door has the shield. Usually, the persons that are responsible for the investigation, let's call them the case agents, that's their responsibility to bring the shields and whatever other equipment we need, battering rams, etc. On this particular day, I had questioned these two individuals and asked them where the shield was, and I talked to the supervisor about it, and they said, well, we forgot it at the office. And I was really hesitant about doing it, to be honest with you. But nevertheless, it was their warrant, their responsibility, so they're going to go through the door first, right? It's their issues.
Right.
But so what ends up happening is the way it ended up working, one of those guys took a battering ram, the other guy took a Halligan tool. So that means I'm number 3, okay? But that makes me number 1 because those two, one hits the door, one uses the Halligan tool. That kind of takes them out of the way. And
You're
so
the first one to observe.
I'm the first one going through the door, okay?
Right.
And when you think about miracles happening and you think about your religious beliefs, they really come into play.
Wow.
So at the end of the day, you know, a lot of times when you hit doors, they don't always open on the first hit.
True.
You know, you may have to hit them numerous times. I mean, I've been in there with some of these steel doors. We couldn't even break them down. You know, you got to break the lock off, and it takes time. But in any event, they hit the door pops open. There was a guy at the about 10 feet away from the door. He was sitting on a chair. He had just fallen asleep. He was on his heels, and he had a sawed-off shotgun in his hands. Now, I had to jump on the guy because the way the door opened, and realistically, I could have shot him without any question because he had the weapon in his hand. But there's no question about it. I didn't shoot him. We did take him into custody. And so, you know, we get into the house. There's another weapon on the top of the banister. It was a 45 that was loaded, pointing down. So now we have this person in custody, and then we secure the house. And so while I'm upstairs in the bedroom, one of the targets in the case that showed up. Well, these guys were heroin dealers, and they'd just been in a shootout in New York City, and they came back to Baltimore. And so they were afraid of retaliation. And the main guy that came back was outside. He was being confronted by another agent. I ran down the steps, and I convinced him to put his hands up. But when he did put his hands up, he had a 9mm tucked under his armpit. So after, again, things have calmed down, we get the situation under control. I actually went back into their living room at the end when we were done, and I broke out in a cold sweat because I knew that I could have lost my life there in a matter of seconds because of someone else's stupidity. And you always learn things when they happen, you know, and a lot of times police involved shootings, you learn from that shooting and you hope that it doesn't go wrong like that particular situation could have gone wrong. You know, so I mean, my clothes were soaked when I sat down and got up and left. And, you know, it's almost like a trauma that could have happened to me. You know, I went home, talked to my wife, told her what happened. And, I had to talk to my supervisor. We discussed the situation. And after that day, I can tell you, I never, ever went to another raid, especially if I was the first one going through, without a ballistic shield. And you only get one chance in life sometime, and that was my chance.
Wow. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and so see, I'm glad we're hearing this because, again, on too many occasions, not all, some of them are obviously bad decisions by cops, but it gets to the point where they're just scrutinized for everything, and I get irritated. I'm like, you know, you see again the meat, and I'll even ask you about this too, like. How do you feel? I'm sure it has to irritate you to a certain extent when America is deciding and like they know, like we're the arbiters of knowledge on this. When they make decisions on everything they see based on 5 seconds of video, that has to infuriate you.
Well, I'll tell you what infuriates me is the narrative that's going on in this country about defunding the police and so many other issues. And the news media has distorted the truth about law enforcement. I get tired of hearing about systemic racism, about this, about that. You know, the cops are this, the cops are that. And in reality, it's not true. And because if you look at law enforcement, you know, starting back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and on, you know, we're really the melting pot of America because I've worked with all races, all nationalities. I've had bosses who were minority, you know, male, female, black, white, it didn't matter. We were there to do our job. And there's nobody that I ever heard said, you know, today we're going out and hunt for this person. And when we see him, we're going to kill him. You know, that's just a false narrative that's been out there. And I despise that type of news media coverage. And I get tired of hearing about it, you know, and I've been retired now for, you know, like I said, 14, 15, well, I'm going on my 15th year. You know, fortunately, I don't have to deal with that situation. But, you know, the cops, and maybe with the exception in Florida and Governor DeSantis that really supports law enforcement, unlike some other states like New York, especially New York City, which is a disgrace.
It's a disaster.
You know, they don't have their backs. And I knew some, you know, I worked some cases with NYPD guys, some of the best I've ever met. And they're leaving in droves, retirements, you know, and you just don't have to look at New York City, Seattle, Portland, and all where all these crazies are that are trying to create a new police force or whatever they want to call it. It'll never work.
Yeah, Larry, do you have a few more moments?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Before we go on, I think Frank, do we have a massive profit break?
Yeah, we can. We could go into.
Yeah, go ahead. Let's put that up, and I just got a couple more for Larry before we let him go.
All right. Let's see. Rocky Hill Accountants. We could go with. They're there for all your tax needs. You
okay.
know, Rocky Hill Accounting, we're going to go ahead and play that commercial now.
Rocky Hill Accountants offers a unique, low-pressure approach to professional and personal services, which is why they have an excellent client retention rate and are extremely proud of the high-quality services that their firm provides. The executive team at Rocky Hill Accountants has over 35 years of combined experience in income tax preparation, bookkeeping, accounting, and IT crypto tax. They specialize in individual income tax preparation, as well as trusts, estates, and gift tax returns. The tax deadline for individuals is May 17th. If you're one of the 50 million Americans who still hasn't filed, visit RockyHillAccountants.com.
I feel richer already. All right, Larry, before you go, there's a couple of previous incidents that I have questions about, and I just want some information or some wisdom regarding these incidents. The first one I want to go to is the one that actually happened. I think it was right after George Floyd. It was, I can't remember his name, but it was the situation in Atlanta at Wendy's.
Mm-hmm. Right.
He was asleep, I think, and cop basically was going to take him in. And I think he knew he was going to be in a lot of trouble because he had a warrant.
Mm-hmm.
And he took his taser, and then eventually the cop shot him. Now, he got criticized up and down the media like we just discussed, And I believe I heard he just got reinstated.
Right.
In your mind and with your background and your knowledge, was that wrong? Did he overdo it? I can't understand why people thought that he was out of line there, but maybe you can fill me in on something I'm not aware of.
Well, I'm familiar with it. I saw it. The guy that they were called, the guy supposedly was intoxicated and was sleeping behind the wheel, which is why they were there in the first place. When people resist arrest, nothing good can come out of it. I just don't understand why. Look, if the officer says you're under arrest, put your hands behind your back, let him handcuff you, because at the end of the day, the officer goes home and you go to jail or go home shortly after that. There is a system called the justice system. We have courts, and they should be the arbitrators and the deciders of what happens to somebody when they commit a crime, whether it's a judge or a jury. So we should leave those decisions up to them. Now, in that particular situation, this individual actually fought off 2 officers, okay? So obviously he was a pretty strong guy, and he did take a taser from the other officer. Now, if you're not familiar with tasers, you got to use the 2 prongs are supposed to hit you in upper mass again. And this way, it penetrates. So when he took that other officer's taser, okay, this guy isn't trained to use a taser. That taser can be a deadly weapon. If you hit somebody in the face with it, guess what's going to happen? Okay. So when the officer started pursuing him, as best as I could tell and saw, that he turned back and he was going to fire that taser. The officer responded as I thought he should have, because that's the way you're trained. And he knew that taser is a deadly weapon. And the reason why he got his job back was because he wasn't given his due process. He was just fired without any type of investigation. So, there are, things in place, the checks and balances against law enforcement when they commit things. So you have an internal affairs department, you have state agencies, outside agencies, you have the Department of Justice. So there's all kind of mechanisms. And with today's video stuff, maybe they did something back in the 60s. That ain't happening today. I can tell you that right now. I think at the end of the day, I think that in that set of circumstances, I think there will be some justice for the officer.
Yeah, I believe he's been reinstated. I don't know if there's going to be any of that back pay. That's a lot of intricacies, but right. He is back on the force. Yeah, I honestly, that was one case where I was like, yeah, I don't see the problem here, guys. I'm sorry. I just couldn't agree with a bunch of people who were just popping off mad. I'm sure they were still freshly mad about George Floyd, but I'm like, yeah, this ain't the same. This is not the same. Sorry.
Well, none of the cases are the same, and everything should be looked as an individual case. Okay?
Right. And we should have all the information, which we normally never do.
Well, you should be able to get the information, but let the system play out. You don't take the law in your own hands. You don't go burning and looting and stealing. I mean, look what happened this past summer. Those were criminals that were going into Target and helping themselves for Christmas shopping. Okay. Yep. They did early Christmas shopping. You can't use that as an excuse to break the law. That is totally out of control. And I know the average citizen, and I'm going to say this, I know that the majority of citizens in this country support law enforcement. No matter where you live.
They do.
Because I've worked in some of the worst communities, and I'll tell you about West Baltimore. Very dangerous, okay, high crime rate. A lot of good people live there, but they want the police there, okay? And I tell people, especially the rich people that are listening, they don't have the security and the pearly gates to protect them. They only have the police to protect them. And so, when you hear these people complaining about the police, they're the ones that live in the nice neighborhoods, not in the bad neighborhoods where the crime's occurring, not where the criminal element runs the streets there. And, when you continue to see what happens, look just what's happened. The murder rate is skyrocketing all over the country, especially in New York and other places.
In big cities. Yep.
It's getting out of control again. You know, New York, when you look at New York back in the 70s.
Oh, I remember.
When mayor, okay. You remember the mayor by the name of Dinkins, who was in charge of the city, right?
I remember Coach.
Okay. Ed Koch.
Yeah, Koch. He was a disaster too.
Yeah. So, you know, until Giuliani got there and they changed it around and they took control back of the streets, New York became one of the safest cities, one of the largest cities in the world, one of the safest cities.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we can't say that now.
No.
The guy that's in charge now is a disaster. I've talked to a lot of the guys on NYPD. They can't wait for the guy to leave. And hopefully
his replacement's going to be any better, though. But
well, I think what you might see, whether it's a Democrat or a Republican, I think what you're going to see is some law and order is going to have to be part of their platform, because you're killing the businesses in New York.
All right. Now, listen, this is the last one I got for you. And this is something that I was talking to with Frank, and he actually shared a story that he experienced in Tampa. And so this goes hand in hand.
Oh, I know what we're talking about.
Yeah, I want everyone to know this, because I'm not even sure, and I believe police behavior is a bit inconsistent with this little scenario.
Mm-hmm.
So a few weeks back, we had that military, the soldier who was pulled over at the gas station.
I saw that.
And the cops were just screaming, and it was a felony stop.
Right.
So this is a two-part question for you, and we'll wrap it up with this. Number one, are the cops supposed to tell you what is going on or why you're being pulled over prior to detaining you, or not? And number two, just your overall take on that situation, because again, it's a felony stop, which means I know that there's a more, I guess, intense or heightened level of procedure when it comes to pulling a person over. But I think he was being pretty cooperative. So, I mean, that one, honestly, I'm baffled and I'm confused, and I don't know why the cops didn't explain it to him. Can you clarify what happened that night for us?
Well, first of all, I don't know if it was an actual felony stop and why the police were actually there. I know that what I saw, they ordered him out of the vehicle,
right?
And they weren't explaining to him what took place. Now, if it's a felony stop, you got to be very careful. And if the police are telling you, hey, listen, get out of the car, put your hands up, that could be a difference. Now, on the other hand, if it wasn't those circumstances, I think that gentleman appeared to be cooperating in one sense of trying to keep things under control. Now, I don't know why those police officers acted the way they did. I don't know all the circumstances, but I think it looked like that officer, I think he was a lieutenant in the military, in the Army. I think it could have been handled maybe a lot differently, and maybe they could have talked to him. I think de-escalation is a key to successful law enforcement. Okay,
right?
You don't want to put a match and just stoke the fire. Okay, you want to de-escalate that fire. Okay, so in those set of circumstances, that could have been a de-escalation. And let's go back to the word training. Okay, let's look at the law enforcement agency. What type of training do they have? Have they had the most recent up-to-date training on de-escalation? So, those are the set of circumstances, that happen. And I'll tell you a quick story about me, then we can go. I was in Texas working in an investigation, okay? And because I got sick, I decided to drive home versus fly home. And there's a lot of circumstances behind it, okay? I was on a four-lane highway, was divided, okay? And I'm driving a red Lincoln Escalator, okay? Now, I can be, at times, look like a Hispanic male. I'm Italian, and, my skin color gets a little bit darker in the summer, but I'm olive
skin. You got that Roman in you, right?
Got that Roman in me, right? Got that Roman in me. And, I'm just driving down the highway. I know I wasn't speeding. And I saw the guy make a U-turn on me, and he pulled me over. Now, that was a high area for drugs being transported. But, he pulls me over, and I cooperate, and I told him who I was, and believe this or not, after I told him who I was, he starts questioning me like I'm a criminal. And I said, well, what are you doing? You're profiling me. I know what you're doing. And he said, no, I'm not. So the guy had a canine dog. And he said to me, do you mind if I search your car? And I'm like, what? You want to search my car for what? So rather than me getting into a fist fight with him or arguing with him, I said, go ahead. And he brings his dog out. I watched him. He wanted me to stay way back. At that point, I didn't trust the guy because I had no idea what his intentions were. And to me, that goes to show you and talk to you about training. Maybe he suspected I was a dirty cop. That could have been. But on the other hand, that situation could have been handled a lot differently. Just like the situation at the gas pump with the lieutenant from the Army. Again, I think it should have been handled differently. I don't know all the circumstances. I know what I would have done in those circumstances. I would have, tried to talk the guy down, calm him down, try to explain to him, hey, we got a call. You fit a description of a person that was just involved in a robbery or something to that extent. Legitimate questions.
Right.
And that's what I was kind of wondering, like, why not explain it to him? I mean, you've got him pulled over. You've even got your guns drawn. Explain it, see what he says, and then at that point, I agree to an extent. Even after an explanation, though, you asked him to get out of the car. He needs to comply. But I'm sure if I heard what you said and I'm like, yeah, I have no idea what he's talking about. Let me just work with the officers. I'm sure I'll beat this and just go home.
Well, according to that story was he pulled into the gas station. Apparently they had turned on the lights.
Yeah, they had turned on the lights for a while.
Right, and he pulled into a well-lit area.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
I've done. Yeah,
I've done that. And obviously, I mean, if I'm in a dark area, I'm gonna make sure that I pull into a well-lit area.
Right. Mm-hmm. But I think the issue though, Frank, if I remember, and Larry, you can chime in, he kept asking, what did I do? All they had to do was explain it. Right. And I didn't understand for the life of me why they didn't. So he's scared, guns are drawn. Right. As much as I can't agree with him not listening to the cops, I can't blame him for being scared and not getting out of the car.
Yeah. Well, again, I don't see, and here's the other situation. I don't know why their weapons were out.
Yeah.
I mean, was there some reason before they arrived, or were they dispatched? And so again, when you do those type of approaches, you got to approach it very carefully. But again, without knowing all the circumstances as to why those officers pulled their weapons out, I have no idea. Like I said, from another standpoint, if you look at it, you de-escalate it, you talk to the guy. He didn't appear to me to be somebody who was a threat that I could tell. And it seemed like to me, like, hey, what did I do, or what's going on? What happened? So it only takes, a couple seconds to explain, hey, listen, we hate to do this, but you have to step out of the car. We got a complaint. You fit a description of somebody that just committed a robbery. And the guy said, oh, no. Well, just step out of the car. Let us check you out. Right. And then we'll clear this up and we'll go home.
Well, hopefully there's more consistent training based on that kind of scenario, because dealing with scared individuals never goes well, and it could lead to problems. So
yes.
Well, Larry, I must say this has been incredibly informative. I think having you on here has been ultra valuable, not just for Frank and I, but for our viewers and our listeners. It's just good to hear it from the other side. I mean, like you said, the media does a bang up job of turning anything it talks about into pure shit. So I'm glad you came on. I'm glad you were able to just present some realities about the mentality and the and the situational stress of just what it is when things can go wrong. I think people need to hear that and understand that. And I'm more than grateful for you being on here. Frank, you got anything to say?
Yeah, Larry, you know what? Thank you. If you guys out there like true crime podcasts, Larry has his own podcast, which is Forletta Investigates. Go check him out he's on Apple, and I'm not sure where else you're on there, Larry. But I'm sure we could find you wherever we look for you.
I love his last name. That's a TV show right there. Tuesday at 9, Forletta. That works. That works.
That works.
Well, Larry, thank you.
Thank you so much for coming by. We totally appreciate you. Have a great evening and a great weekend.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate
All right.
it.
Wow, that was pretty amazing there with Larry. I think we went a little bit longer than what we really wanted to, but I mean, I think
we did, man. I think everything he said we needed to hear. That was primo. I think having him on was great, and I think even ask him about those little situations. I mean, not everybody in our comment section is going to be involved in drug raids. At least I hope not. But to each his own. You're on your own.
Yeah, definitely. But
to hear what he had to say about that pullover situation, because a lot of us end up in that kind of situation. We can get we can be misidentified. I know one time in Miami when I was driving my 300, I got pulled over for like zero reason. Like I just made a right turn and lights are behind me. Like, sir, let me see your license. Like, all right, no, you're not the guy. Good day. I'm like, what the hell was that? That was like the quickest pullover ever. You just never know. You never know. And
I'll tell you
that was crucial.
I'll tell you a quick pullover story on me. You remember back in the day, we were still young, where I would just pop up at your house.
Yeah, long time ago.
Well, yeah, I forgot. Well, I don't remember where I was coming from, but I was driving and I'm going down 132nd Avenue, and it curves a little bit, and then you just make a left to go to your house. Yeah. So I pulled in there, and as I pulled in, I got pulled over by a cop.
Nice.
He was a Sweetwater cop on top of that, and I was like,
Sweetwater?
I'm like, you're out of your district, guy.
Yeah.
What'd I do? He's like,
what are you doing out here?
He's like, that's exactly what he asked me. What are you doing? I said, my friend lives right down the street. I just came to visit my friend. Well, does your friend know you're coming? I'm like, no. But what'd I do? Well, you're driving too fast. I'm like, I probably wasn't. But how fast was I going? I couldn't tell me anything. I think the guy was just, busting my balls.
Well, that's a problem, though. I mean, I think, again, I'm not going to expect cops to be perfect as much as we want them to, and as much as they should strive to be. They're people too, and you're going to get a clown like that where they just want to pull you over just to ask you questions. I mean, maybe you were driving kind of funny, and he just wanted to make sure, and he didn't have much to say, and pulling you over in the hammocks when you're from Sweetwater.
But
for those who don't know, those two areas are not close to each other. Just jump
not at all.
So,
not at all.
But before we go, I guess I think I was supposed to have a somewhat of a counseling with Carlos session here. Something happened to you. Something happened to you again.
Yeah, man. Counseling with Carlos. What can I tell you, man?
Tell me, Frank. Tell me about your week, Frank. What happened?
Dude, I start getting these weird phone calls, about me wanting insurance.
Oh,
they have my name. They're like, yeah, are you Frank? I'm like, who's this?
Yeah,
this is so-and-so from, whatever you called insurance and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, dude, I'm not looking for car insurance. Where's the Oh, but you requested it online. I'm like, no, I didn't request it online.
I didn't.
I'm like, all right, goodbye. Click. Whatever. I didn't think much of it.
Mm-hmm.
Then a couple hours later, there goes my phone again. It's another one.
You need insurance, Frank.
I'm like, dude, I'm not looking for insurance. I already did this. What is going on? So I get pissed off. I hang up. Again, I must have gotten maybe, I kid you not, about 20 phone calls in about 2 days.
Wow, that's pretty heavy. Like, I mean, I know most of us in America, it's funny when I make a joke about extended warranties, we all get it, which means all of us are getting those crappy calls. But 20 in 2 days, you must have clicked on a bad website.
Dude, I was pissed. Until finally the last person that called, I'm like, look, and you know what? These people sounded legit. I'm like, look, let me ask you a question. Where'd you get my information from? Who do you think I am?
Who do you think I am?
No, they're like, oh, you're Frank. I'm like, yeah, I'm Frank. They're like, oh, you're Frank Cuesta. I'm like, yeah, I'm Frank Cuesta. Oh, you're 58 years old. I'm like, no, I'm not 58 years old. They're like, oh, your wife is. They're like, your wife is Jennifer. I'm like, Jennifer. I'm like, I don't even know a Jennifer. Where are you coming from? You know, so apparently somebody gave my information out. You know, Carlos, like my brother's coming and take me off your list. Yeah, you know what would be great to take you off your list, but you know what? Doesn't matter. They don't always go off your list. You know, so it was one of those where I was like, wow, you know. Hey, but either way, enough of my counseling session.
I think this time you're all right, Frank. It appears that some other Frank Cuesta out there is doing a bad job of keeping his insurance afloat, and he's getting calls, and somehow.
Well, he's not getting the calls.
No, and unfortunately, you're the one getting nailed with the phone calls, and that's just, you know.
Yeah, it was disgusting.
Now, imagine if you had gotten insurance calls and extended warranty calls all in 2 days.
You know, when I get those extended warranty calls, I just start making some weird noises on the phone. They just hang up. You know?
You should tell them, I won't buy your warranty unless I get to wash your car first.
Gee, thanks at the car wash. Hey, Carlos, give me just 5 more minutes of your time today.
Oh, boy.
I want to talk right quickly about Colt Brennan.
Oh, the quarterback.
I want to talk about him. I mean, I know we had a full show, but Forletta, you know, took up majority of the show. But there's one thing that we spoke about last week when we were talking with Steven about Colombia, right?
Right.
Where, you know, he was saying that, hey, you know, to get, you know, not everybody in Colombia gets medical assistance.
Right.
You know, that they get turned away. And that is exactly, you know, actually, hold on, let me back up a little bit. And that's when we compared it to here, and we're like, hey, you know what? Here you get service. You know, you have your, you know, something happens to you, you go to the hospital, and they're going to take care of you.
Yeah.
You know, which, you know, Colt Brennan here, he got denied.
Right.
You know, it's a little bit different maybe because he was
because this is a rehab situation. I get it, but I get where you're going. And unfortunately, well, here's the problem, Frank. From what I'm reading, he was turned away from a residential facility, meaning the whole point of it is to stay there and officially detox from whatever it is you're suffering from. But if they have no beds, where are they going to put you?
Yeah, but
now,
you know what?
Why? I don't know if there was some kind of referral system. Like, for example, if you come to my place and I don't have beds for you, but I don't want to send you just back out there to continue to battle this addiction, I should be phoning every other place to find you something. I don't know if there was that kind of follow-up. There should be.
I think there should be. You know, that's one of those things where, you know, especially when it comes to drug usage, you know, when you have these people that are, you know, addicts, you know, the same thing with alcohol, you know, you're not going to get help unless you want help, you know. And when people reach out, you know, for whatever addiction they have to one of these, you know, facilities, regardless if there's beds or not, I think, you know, you owe it, let me not say owe it, but I think you need to go that extra step and help this person. You know, I mean, I'm one, I'll be real honest with you. I'm one that I don't go out of my way to help people too often. You know, if you ask me for help, I'll help you. You know, am I going to go an extra mile if you're not asking me? No. But consider the fact that this guy, he went somewhere, he asked for help. Oh, I'm sorry, there's no beds. Come back another day.
Right.
No, I think it's up to, the facility. Hey, let me get on the phone, say, hey, I got this guy. You guys got space?
Right.
Yes. All right, no problem. I'm going to send them to you. Hey, Mr. Colt, guess what? Look, I can't have you here, but there's this place for you. Go ahead and go over there. And you know what? Then at that point, it's up to him.
Yeah, shit, the airlines. But you and I have discussed that. As much as I'm not a big fan of universal health care, I did concede, though, that I'm okay with some aspect of it when it comes to mental health, because we are woefully under equipped to handle it. And this is a prime example. This is a prime example where he should have been referred. There should be a system where he can go, especially in his case where he was pretty bad on fentanyl, I guess. So that requires some strong detox, and you can't just turn people back like that. They're bound to just go and get themselves killed. I'm only speaking from what I know. Maybe there's some other aspects to this that we might learn, but I get you though. That there should be. We do need more. We do need more facilities to handle addiction and mental health, and there's not enough right now. There's not enough. And then I'm not even sure if it touched up on insurance, but that might be an issue sometimes too.
Well, so, I could tell you from my own experiences, when it comes down to insurance, not my own experiences, I'm sorry, but majority of insurance companies do cover that.
Yeah, they do. They do. But if there's no room, there's no room. I mean, the thing is, it's not like some outpatient programs where I can send you home and we can visit your house and check on you. The whole point of detox is to keep you completely confined to an area to avoid you to make sure you don't get your hands on anything else. So it's got to be in-house. And if there's no room, they're not going to have you sleeping in a hallway. They're not going to prep you a bed on a cafeteria table. So what we just need are bigger and more efficient facilities. And it's a shame, though, because he was what, 20?
He was 37 years old.
37?
37.
That's crazy. Yeah, that's young, man. That's young. And I remember he was pretty good. He had a nice tight spiral. He was very athletic. It's a shame. Yeah. I do feel that the U.S. can definitely do some upgrading when it comes to mental health and addiction. And hopefully that day will come, and we can do it responsibly, efficiently, and effectively. So we'll see, man. Yeah. We'll see.
Hey, quick question, Carlos. Quick question. Have you gotten your second COVID shot yet?
Friday. I go full Resident Evil Friday.
Next Friday.
Yeah, next Friday.
You see, that sucks for you because I think right now they're one of the new COVID stuff that changes all over the time. I mean, all the time now is if you've gotten vaccinated, you have both shots. Guess what? You don't gotta wear your mask anymore.
Yeah, man. So I gotta wait 7 more days, and then but like you said, the message is always changing. Like gotta wear a mask indoors, maybe outdoors on Tuesday. It's gotta be red after 3:30.
Yeah, I mean now supposedly you don't have to wear it, either indoors or outdoors.
Listen, man, this whole mask shit has been un gran bayou. It's just been and again, we've talked about why people have faith in this and why this is.
I'll be honest with you. I think it works. Carlos, shut up with DeSantis for freaking president. I think we're gonna ban him out of here. Ban that guy.
We're not gonna extend the show any further on that one. We'll save that for next week if anything.
Yeah, we'll save it for another week.
I gotta get them back in here. But So next Friday, dude, I'm gonna light a match to my mask and I'm done. I don't care anymore. I'm done. I'm done breathing that damn thing in my face all the time.
Yeah,
but get the shot.
Wait,
Nah.
but you gotta remember this.
Here
You gotta
comes the
remember
next
this.
fairy tale.
Yeah, the
Fauci
next fairy-
said.
No. It has nothing to do with Fauci.
Thank God.
Okay, it has to do with the fact of private businesses could go ahead and
Oh yeah, I know.
established.
I'll have one in my pocket, and if they absolutely must or demand that I wear one, I'll comply. But as soon as I step out the door, shit's right off. I'm done. Like,
Yeah, I think
I will not wear that thing a second longer than I have to after next Friday. No mas. No mas.
I wouldn't either. But hey, look, you know what, guys? Again, thank you to Larry Forletta for coming on. I mean,
Yes, that was incredible. That was awesome.
Yeah, he gave us.
And I hope whoever was listening, just take what he said into account. The next time you hear about an incident on TV and the volatility of these situations, and get the information before you make a judgment, and stop jumping up at 5 seconds of every video you see. That's all I got to say, honestly. And I think he shed some light on some things that not many people are aware of, and it was great to hear. And I appreciate him for being here.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry, real quick. What do you think of the cruise line pissing match? It's just that. It's a pissing match.
I don't even know what that is. And I'm not sure I want to.
Yeah, no, you probably don't. It's pretty much the cruise lines and DeSantis going back and forth. What could happen? What should happen?
I'll look at Carlos. I'll check that out. I'll look at it and see what's going on. I haven't really heard about it, but
you know what? Let's do this, Carlos. Let's save that one for next week.
All right.
Well, as a matter of fact, I actually started working on the show, so I'm gonna go ahead and put that on it. I'm just gonna put cruise line
pissing matches.
That's exactly what I'm gonna write. Cruise line pissing match. So what we're gonna do is, Carlos Cuesta, next week, get your facts together. We'll bring you on board, and you can talk about your cruise line pissing match. And if you're lucky enough, then maybe we'll keep you all show. If not, you'll just come and talk about that topic, and we'll get you out.
All right.
You know, with that being said, look, you know what? This is the ending of the show. Carlos, any final words?
No, man, great show. Great audience. I mean, I wish we could address the comments like we normally do while Larry was going, but he was being so informative. I was not going to ruin his flow. I think letting him talk was just the best thing. So I apologize to anyone in the comment section if you made a comment and we didn't address it like we normally tend to. It was just good to hear him talk and to absorb all that knowledge. So, no, man, great show. Honestly, I would love to go further, but I gotta head down to the MIA tomorrow, so I gotta pack.
No, yeah, no problem, no worries. Hey, look, with that being said, guys, and I should always say this at the beginning of the show, and I always forget. I get so excited. Look, share our page, share our podcast. Tag a person you think needs to be tagged in. Tag a person who you think doesn't need to be tagged in. Tag your frenemies. Doesn't matter.
Your friend.
All right? Of course. Tag whoever you want. You know what? Let them know that Speaking It Real is the real deal. All right? And we're always going to come out here. Whether you agree with what we're speaking, whether you don't agree with what we're speaking, the one thing you know for sure is that Carlos and I will always be speaking it real. We'll see you next week, guys.
Good night. Have a great weekend.
Good night.
The Closing Time Podcast is back, sponsored by Rocky Hill Accountants. I'm Joe Aguirre. I'll have a brand new co-host, Sanam Salati, who's my broker, my mentor, and my good friend, and one of the most knowledgeable people in Connecticut in the entire real estate industry. We're going to be talking about the latest goings-on. We'll keep you up to date on the market, and we're going to bring on some really great guests all throughout this season, people in all different fields in the industry, like accountants, home inspectors, mortgage reps, and so much more, just to give you a better understanding of the Connecticut real estate market. We're so excited for a brand new season of the Closing Time Podcast, part of the CMG Podcast Network. It's sponsored by Rocky Hill Accountants. Go see Heidi and Glenn Parchman to file your taxes for bookkeeping, business advice, real estate investments, or whatever your accounting needs are, including cryptocurrency. Just visit RockyHillAccountants.com. We'll see you all season long on the Closing Time Podcast.